What on earth did I just witness? Oh my god. Not great, but great position. You know, it's having the worst room in Hawaii. Oh, we got saved by the big blind waking up with ace king suited because we were certainly going to double the 2-seed up there. Let us begin. Pocket jacks, pretty good hand. Don't really know much about my opponent so far. I have a little mark on the 4-seat because they open minimal and blind versus blind. I'm not exactly sure what that means, but it's just something unusual. So we'll be kind of paying attention to, their actions moving forward to see if they distinguish themselves as a white belt or, some other kind of strange type of strategy that I haven't seen before, but probably a white belt. 3-betting the king jack of diamonds on the button. Could flat. I think flatting is also a viable option, especially with the 4-seat potentially in the mix, but I think 3-betting is quite good as well. Triple low board, overcards with a backdoor flush draw. Can go a variety of different ways here. I think checking is pretty reasonable. Probably the first option. I think I am going to check on a6-4 because, they can have a number of pocket pairs and pair plus draws that are going to be pretty quick to defend. And we have, some decent backdoor equity. So we'll start with the check, but could certainly make a case for betting. If I did bet, this board would be a board that I bet on the larger side. So now when we do pick up some equity, going to bet a third, it's a spot where I'm not expecting villain to do a lot of check raising. So just going to essentially bet a third. And if they do check raise, we'll have a good price to peel, and we can still generate lots of folds, and we still have equity. So, yeah, just a bunch of good reasons to bet a third there on the turn. The ace-10 of clubs, certainly going to be ISOing the limper from the hijack, who appears to be a white belt. Let's just go ahead and dub them so. Ace-10 suited is a good hand. Certainly want to be putting in more money in position to the white belt here. We get limp raised, somewhat small. Not exactly sure. Getting 2-1 with another 176 to win. I feel as if this doesn't have to be super nutted, but could be. Yeah, it's really. Only played a few hands with them. Yeesh. I think I'm just gonna fold. Actually, if they were deeper, then I believe I'd be more inclined to peel. But them being so short actually reduces the value of my suitedness. Ace Queen of Hearts, quite a pretty hand on the button. Gonna be 3-betting if the 6-seat opens. Not for nothing. This is, I think, the second time I've 3-bet the cutoff. I don't know if that really means much, but now we flop, backdoor flush draw with ace queen high on deuce straight 6. So kind of similar to the last spot where we check behind with the king jack and then, bet a third on the turn. I think here, again, it feels pretty close. The board is less connected this time. So, and our hand is relatively stronger with ace high. So we have some showdown value with ace high. So I think in this case, I'm still going to check behind. But, it could make an argument for betting as well. I think betting is totally reasonable. It's just if I'm betting all of my ace highs here, I'm going to have a lot of overcards. So the jack of spades on the turn, again, I could go a number of different ways. I don't know what betting really accomplishes. Maybe equity over realization, but yeah, I'm going to check behind and kind of play this by ear based on villain's river decision. So villain bets 80% on the river. I think I'm just going to fold. Pocket tens in the small blind. That's going to be a quite raisable hand. And villain did not have a defendable hand, so c'est la vie. 6-9 of clubs. Going to be a defend facing an open. I would accept just, a walk. That'd be fine too. Gut shot with unders on the paired board. Probably a spot that I just want to start out betting. Have some straight equity, can make some pairs, and would like to realize some fold equity. I could get check raised here on the flop at some clip, but pretty slam dunk fold, I think, facing a flop check raise. So turning the 9, now we can certainly have the best hand. Villains like queen jack type hands can either c-bet the flop or go for a flop check raise. So I'm not super concerned about like queen jack. I'm not super concerned with 6-7. I think villain has a lot of either ace highs or 8x's. Some of those 8x's are going to be like 7-8. Some of them will have, the backdoor heart property. So, king 8 of hearts, ace 8 of hearts, queen 8 of hearts, jack 8 of heart type hands. But by and large on the 4 straight, yeah, I didn't really expect them to bet that much. It's more a matter now of like, can we bet? Do they have natural value that traps? Maybe their value that traps would be some flushes and or boats. I think that I can get some thin value here though. The hands that kind of trap would be those flushes, potentially boats, although I think boats probably check raise at some clip. Do they have bluffs that check raise here? Harder to find bluffs, to be honest. A little bit too thin. Villain had the A7-0 that they check all the flop with. Whatever. I think the value bet is still fine, though. 6-5 of diamonds, certainly going to be a 3-bettable hand if we get the chance, and we do. Generally 3-betting a little bit more polar from the big blind. Meant to go to 111, but mouses be hard, mouse wheels be hard. Queen 10 off. Playable from the button. Not really playable facing a 3-bet, so let's hope that reality doesn't happen. Ace-high two-tone, ace-jack deuce. We have gut shot to the nuts as well as a backdoor flush draw. I think that I'm going to start out with a big bet here with my front door equity on a board that should be quite good for me as opposed to villain. They have some like maybe ace deuce suited in their range. 3-bet a lot of their ace jack, 3-bet jack, 3-bet aces, have deuces. But by and large, we're just going to have, the nut advantage there. And ace 4 of spades. We got back-to-back V-pippable hands. If I get 3-bet here, I might 4-bet. We'll just see. Prescient. I have willed this to happen, and so we will go ahead and flick in the 4-bet with ace 4. Flopping a gut shot with an overcard. I think I'm going to start out with a check, actually, and probably go for check raise all in. If villain does decide to stab the flop, I think we have, decent equity when we check jam, and we could also just, turn this straight when it checks through. Now it's a situation where, villain can perceive us to have lots of nothings. Now it's just a matter of, sizing selection here. Do I go a third? Do I go half? If I go a third, the SPR is still pretty palatable for River Jam. Brings it down to under 1. So, yeah. Want to get more action when you have very strong hands rather than less action. But, I think it's a little bit counterintuitive, but them folding to a third on the turn is sad when we turn this straight. But by and large, we're not going to turn this straight. And I think it's actually pretty good strategically when we can just bet a third and take it down there on the turn with our dry gut shot, like what we'll have most of the time. So even though it's not great that they fold when we have a very strong hand, a lot of the time or most of the time we're going to have quite a weak hand, and then it's pretty good when they fold. So, a little bit of a bittersweet scenario. Pocket jacks on the baton. Despite popular belief, we would love to get some action here with our jacks. Queen 10-4. We block a lot of their natural check raises. I think we could bet or check, and I'm going to start out with a third for value here with my jacks. I can get called by 10x. I can get called by 4x. Maybe some backdoor spades, hearts, or diamonds, and then potentially deny some equity versus their king highs or potentially their ace highs. But I think that's less of a consideration there. More so just getting value on the flop, probably checking the turn, and then playing rivers accordingly, either value betting or probably calling a bet. Opening the ace-10 off with white belt in the small blind, potential white belt in the big blind. They bought in short. Nothing going facing the 3-bet. Just going to fold the ace-10 off, but c'est la vie. King 10 off here facing a button open in a small blind flat. I think I'm going to squeeze. Again, the 5 seat is a presumptive white belt or potential white belt with their buy-in size. And then we have the small blind flat on top of it. So just putting extra pressure on them, and they put even extra pressure on me. So I'm just gonna be letting it go, sadly. Pocket 9's facing a hijack open. I think we could go a number of different ways here. We could 3-bet. I think I'm just going to flat and then kind of go with the flow of what happens if, one of the villains squeezes. Yeah, so don't know a ton about this villain. Only played 20 hands or so. They seem fairly active. Have a shortish stack. That's painful. I was going to back raise, back jam with the 9s, but now facing the cold 4, we just have to let it go and cry in the peony. Ooh, maybe we'll not cry in the peony. Ho ho ho! We got saved by the big blind waking up with ace king suited, because we were certainly going to double the 2 seat up there. Gonna step out a little bit here with the pocket 6s and flat the cutoff. I don't know if the 2 seat is a white belt. I'm pretty confident that the 4 seat's a white belt though. So taking a flop IP 3 ways, or if they 3-bet, being able to flat with 6s IP is either scenario is going to be quite nice and generally plus EV. So not a ton of bad things can happen here when I flat with the 6s and this exact configuration. It's really important to pay attention to, the players behind and their profiles as it relates to doing some things like, getting a little bit out of line and flatting the cutoff. Flopping an underpair, just going to start with a check. And on the turn 3 flush, yeah, I was going to say that I could bet a third and try to make it showdown, but villain bets a third. I'm just going to let it go. Ace Queen suited is a nice and pretty hand. 8-8 deuce, again, I think there's a number of different ways to go. We could bet the flop, we could check. I think I'm going to start out with a check. Actually have a hand that's pretty nice to call some bets with out of position. Facing a third, I think it's just pretty slam dunk call and kind of see what develops. Unfortunately, pretty much all of villain's hands have decent equity against ace-queen because they can, turn or river pairs, but them not betting the turn is pretty nice, but they had the Dewey, and so that makes us the Louisers. But we get a chance for redemption with a king and a 9. King 5-5, rainbow. I think it's a board. Again, we could go a number of different directions. I think I'm just going to check, though. Have a hand that probably wants to play for 2 streets. Now, rivering the... Turning the flush draw and potentially rivering a flush may make me want to play for potentially 3 bets. Have a hand that wants to play for 2 bets on the flop and not super great, potentially getting check raised. Villain's not going to realize a ton of equity when I check behind, so it's pretty safe. Only real terrible card on the turn, terrible would be like an ace, and that would just kind of give us the, that would turn our hand that wants to play for 2 bets into a hand that probably just wants to play for 1 bet. But even when we check back the flop and the turn is an ace, we're going to have a lot of ace-x that checks back. So even like the turn ace is not the end of the world. It's not an outright disaster. So villain tank checks on the river once we make our flush. So now I think we have a number of options. Probably going to bet small, and maybe we can get a check raise out of villain. I think they're going to check raise their flushes. They probably will check raise their straights. Their jack gets demoted once the flush completes, so think that it's a little bit tough asking for a jack to put in a big bet, and villain actually just had pocket 8s, so there you go. Our turn with the 8s. Certainly going to be a hand that I call a 3-bet with. If it gets cold forward, then what can you do? But yeah, flopping in overpair in a 3-bet pot out of position. I've seen worse flops. Villain starts with half. Don't think we have... I mean, we could check raise, but we could check raise. We're going to go the call route. 10 doesn't change a ton. I mean, they're like 10x of hearts, 10x of diamonds do turn top pair. That would be the primary fear of the 10. We block a lot of the draws that we'd like them to have, so the hands that I think I'm just going to fold. I think it's too easy for them to go bet jam with their 10x for value. My visibility is super low. I don't know what rivers to call on, what rivers to fold. I block a lot of their bluffs or natural, flush draws and straight draws. So yeah, just gonna make what feels like a relatively snug fold and get to sweat the download. But now we have aces, so we can put some money in and hope that good things happen. That's a pretty good thing. So the white belt in the small blind 3-bet. I'm of 2 minds here. I think that I could actually just cold call. I could also, cold 4. I think I'm going to cold call, though. It's a little bit tricky because, maybe the 2-seat can jam facing the cold call. That would be kind of the nut type scenario. But when they fold, I think it's also quite a good situation because now we can play a 2-street game with a 4-seat and still get the money in due to their, shortish stack. The SPR is only around 3. we call the turn. There's going to be 520 in the pot. SPR is going to be 1. So now it's like, cool, we just call the turn, and if they jam, then we call, and if they check, then we jam. Godspeed. And now is the part where, you start second guessing of, well, maybe if I would have 4-bet, maybe they would have just got it in with whatever hand they had. But ace 4 off. Not great, but great position. It's having the worst room in Hawaii. And unfortunately, sometimes a volcano spews lava all over your shitty Hawaiian room, and you have to fold. Queen 5 of clubs, gonna be certainly calling. Never mind. just kidding. Certainly gonna be folding, facing the 3-bet. See if their squeeze works out any better than mine. Mine did not go super well. About the same. Theirs worked out about the same as mine did. What on earth did I just witness? Oh my god. What the heck just happened? 7-5 just decided to get it in. I'm going to go on a limb and say that this villain is a little bit wild, and now we have aces. Hooray. That is crazy. Where's our 7-5 now? Come on! More blind versus blind battles with this dude. Pocket 6 is going to be probably pretty good enough to 3-bet, actually, but we will call. Villain starts with half on ace king 5. I think that they can be betting at a decent clip, and we have the 6 of hearts. Without the 6 of hearts, I think we more than likely consider folding, but with the 6 of hearts, calling, and I think there's 2 reasons why calling with the 6 of hearts is better than not having the 6 of hearts. The obvious one is that you can make a backdoor flush. You have the backdoor flush property, and that's pretty nice. I think the less obvious one is that when you turn a set, it does not complete a flush. The 6 of diamonds and 6 of clubs, neither completes a flush. So anyway, here we are with 6s. Gonna check back and try to realize our equity here. I think that villain probably not going to have a ton of bluffs on this run out. So when they check, feel like because they don't have a ton of bluffs when they bet, that we're going to have some showdown equity and beat some hands. We're going to lose to probably like Jack X more than King X, and just win a fair amount when we check behind. The reason why I think we lose more to Jack X and King X is because King X can really consider value betting the river. They don't necessarily have to just check. King Jack off in the cutoff, and nothing happens. So probably a good result that everybody folds. Putting money in with the ace 4 of spades worked out so well earlier. We're going to go ahead and 3-bet the ace 4 of clubs. It's a hand that actually we could consider jamming facing a 4-bet, but doesn't make it that far. So again, flopping a gut shot on a low board and a backdoor flush draw. I think that there are a number of ways we can start out on the flop. We can c-bet, we can check and then check raise, we can check call. So just have a variety of different options here. Facing what is third, I think I'm just going to start out by calling. Check raising is going to be clearly on the table. I think that we actually have a fair amount of equity with just our ace high, and now we turn the nut flush draw, and villain bets a half. So I wonder if we can get called, potentially called by worse. some of their diamond hands and overcards. I want to be able to fully realize my equity here. I don't want to get bluffed off my ace high by their like, you know, king, queen of diamonds, or just like queen, jack of hearts or whatever when they go bet jam. So I think we're just going to check raise with our equity and hope to generate some folds. And if they call, we still got some hope with our nut flush draw, hopefully, unless they flop the set. And if they flop the set, then good for them. Those hands are actually quite hard to make. So if they flop the set, then they deserve it. And bluff gets through. Winner, winner, chicken dinner. Ace king suited's a pretty looking hand. We'll be putting more money in the pot pre-flop. Maybe all the money in the pot pre-flop. So villain in the 2 seat is pretty wild. I wonder if they over ISO facing limp, in which case they could also over 3-bet facing open too. So kind of risky here, just limping, but they did it. They put in the 35, so we'll be putting in the raise blind versus blind with what is clearly a very nice hand. Not the end of the world making, you know, a few big blinds, four big blinds or whatever it was, 3.5. Clawing back my small blinds, nice as well. And we get to open a 6 and a 5 of the same suit. Pretty looking hand. Facing a 3-bet. Just going to be calling and seeing what develops, and what developed is not super great. So I'm going to turn my attention over to king and a 10 of diamonds that's going on simultaneously, and neither one really did anything. So no attention needed pretty much anywhere. We shall be opening the king 3 since we have the opportunity. Have the big blind marked as a white belt, but might be some kind of hybrid. I'm not exactly sure. They are 3-betting quite frequently. King 3 is... I think I'm just going to 4-bet them. Gonna push a little bit here. They're 3-betting quite often. So I think that I can expand my 4-betting range based on the frequency in which they're 3-betting. 10, 7, 5, not the greatest of flops for me. I wonder if betting or checking is better. They're gonna have a lot of like ace queen type hands, king queen type hands. So I think that, I wonder if just sizing up to half on the flop is going to be okay. We can target all of their, you know, ace queens, ace jacks, queen jacks, king queens, and once they call, now we just really check behind and try to realize some equity. Ace is nice and bluffable. A 6 is clearly good. 10, not the greatest. Now, like, we beat 8-9, we beat jack 9, don't beat a ton. We lose to like pocket 8s, pocket 9s. I don't think those hands are folding, no matter really what I do. So I guess I just check and hope. Yeah, I think we do lose to some of their like king, queen, king, jack of clubs, but I think those hands are probably inclined to just check raise all in on the flop instead of check calling. So yeah. Jacks is totally a reasonable hand to have there, and yeah, it's what happens when your perception of a villain being somewhat aggressive may just be an illusion. You end up putting in lots of money with a 4-bet with a king and a 3 of diamonds. All right, we got the kings. Sometimes I think that, you know, with the king 3 of diamonds hand, that when I'm streaming or making some kind of P&E type content, that whenever I get an inkling that something might be okay, like the king 3 of diamonds, that I tend to take the aggressive action rather than the passive action, just because it's much better for YouTube. Pocket kings here. I think we're just going to start out with a big bet on 8-6 deuce rainbow. We clearly have a hand that is value. Villain will 3-bet their pocket 8s. They could have deuces and 6s in their range. They could have 6s in, top 2 pair. So when the 8 pairs, kind of interesting. I actually think I'm going to bet the turn and fold to a check raise. We have 8x in our range, and it's actually a little bit scary for 8x when we big bet the turn. I think we can still probably get called by 6x. We can still probably get called by 5s, 4s, 3s. So, there's a turn flush draw on the table. May even go for 3 streets here with the kings. I think it's somewhat reasonable that we go for 3 streets of value. Just a matter of whether or not they call with their 6x often enough or their deuce x. The 5 does complete 7-9, but kind of is what it is. Don't think they jam their 8x on the river, so I'm not really worried about getting bluffed. So I'm just going to go for 3 thin streets of value there with my kings. And actually, that hand will wrap it up. Thanks for joining. Looks like I lost about $250. So I will see you next time. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe to the Chasing Poker Greatness channel on YouTube. And don't be out there for betting the king 3 of diamonds. You can see how it ruined my life, and it'll probably ruin your life too. See you next time.
This is Chasing Poker Greatness with your host, Brad Wilson. Coach Brad approved. Are you a lone wolf searching for the ultimate pack? The CPG Wolf program is a close-knit brotherhood hell-bent on one thing only: chasing poker greatness. Powered by bleeding-edge wolf strats and led by Coach Brad and his lieutenants, CPG Wolves are systematically prepared for almost any spot they'll encounter on the green felt. If you want to plug into an elite team and have a step-by-step game plan to realize your full poker potential, you can apply at cpgwolves.com. Space is limited, and the pack is only as strong as its weakest member. So only the hungriest, grittiest, and most driven will be accepted into the program. Applications are open at cpgwolves.com.